let me introduce you to the 5 candidates who are running to represent you in this year's provincial election. For the Progressive Conservative Party, we have Mr. Anthony MacDonald. For the For the Communist Party, we have Ms. Juanita Burnett. For the Green Party, we have Mr. Mike Schreiner. For the Liberal Party, we have Ms. Liz Sandals. And for the New Democratic Party, we have Mr. James Gordon. So, Mr. MacDonald of the Conservative Party, may I invite you to the podium to give us your opening speech?
How are y'all doing today? Good. I had a speech made. I was going to read it. It was 5 minutes long, and as I wrote it, I realized 5 minutes in front of a school is like a month. So I decided I would just talk about myself and where I came from, how I got here, and how important it is to pay attention to what goes on in politics, not just in your riding provincially, but federally also. So 15 years ago, I came here from Prince Edward Island. I wanted a better life for myself. I wanted someday, possibly the same as you, to raise a family, own a house, and be able to save some money to retire. So I started at the bottom, and I worked my way up. I started grooming horses and taking care of them and jogging them and training them, and then eventually, over the last 7 years, I've become one of the leading drivers in Canada, which I'm quite proud of. I was very fortunate. I met and married my wife, Amy. We had 2 kids and a dog, and we live on Clare and Gordon. So 3 years ago, the Liberal Party canceled the Slots at Racetracks program, which was a very, very vital program to my industry. People were displaced, people were leaving, people were unemployed. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know where to get answers from. So like everybody else, I looked to leadership, and there wasn't much in my industry. Everybody was confused. So what I did was I spoke at a rally for my industry at Queen's Park. I spoke for about 10 minutes. I was angry. It had just been about 4 weeks since this had all happened, and I was frustrated that I hadn't heard any good news. I was frustrated that I didn't know if I'd had a future. I just had a baby girl at the time. I didn't know if I'd have to leave and move to the States. So 2 people come down from the legislature, and they said, Mr. MacDonald, would you be interested in working with politics in Guelph? I looked at them and I said, no, not at all. I wasn't familiar with a lot of the politics, and I raced horses. You know, I still made a good living at it, and I was there speaking for the people that didn't make a good living anymore. People like my brother that had to move to the United States. Friends that were displaced and unemployed, some of them with no jobs, some of them got jobs in construction. So I simply said no. I went home, kept racing horses. 4 weeks later, we have another rally. I go there and I speak again. I'm a little more angry now. Same 2 people come down. Mr. MacDonald, have you given any more thought to working with politics in Guelph? I said, you're asking me a big question here. I said, it's a tough thing to answer. I said, I got a wife, I got kids, but I do realize something needs to be done. So I said I'd talk to my wife about it. We talked back and forth. 3 weeks later, Lisa MacLeod calls me and says, we're having a rally for rural Ontario. I know it's not just horse racing, it's rural Ontario. Would you be interested in speaking? I said, yep. So that day I went and spoke, and the 2 people come down again. They said, Mr. MacDonald, would you be willing to get involved again? I said, yes, I would. So I walked around Guelph. I talked to small businesses. I talked to people, realized that we're all the same, whether it was an electrician or a plumber. Whoever it was felt that the government was laying on them. They couldn't get ahead. They couldn't save money. They couldn't pay their hydro bills, their taxes. They asked me, a guy asked me one time, well, why a progressive conservative? I believe we shouldn't run up debt and deficit. I believe we should pay our bills. I believe that we should be able to afford our taxes. I believe that hydro should be affordable. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not like a lot of these people. I'm not a career politician. I have no aspirations to stay in politics my whole life. I want to raise my kids. But if somebody has to stand up and do something, somebody has to say, we need a change. We're going in this direction for a decade. Our debt has doubled. We need to go in a different direction. We need to create jobs and bring jobs to Ontario. We need change. So I'm going to tell you, on June 12th, a vote for Anthony McDonald is just that. It's a vote for change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. There goes my mic. I'll now ask Ms. Burnett to begin the cross-examination. You have 1 minute, Ms. Burnett.
No pressure. I guess my big question is, what are the policies in the Progressive Conservative Party that you think we need focus on? I think jobs are very important, but I'm really confused about the policies of that party.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Progressive Conservatives, like a lot of people, probably a lot of your parents, believe that we need to start paying down the debt, that we can't continue to run deficits. You know, in your household, if you don't have money, you don't have money. Everybody wants more, but at the end of the day, we have to pay attention to what we have. Right now, we don't have money in Ontario. We don't have jobs in Ontario. Our taxes are too high. Our hydro rates are too high. At the end of the day, we have to start putting people back to work, and we can't do that if our province is broke. So when you ask what policies, the policies that will revolve around the debt and the deficit. We are the only party that said by the end of 2016, the deficit will be zero.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett and Mr. McDonald. Mr. Schreiner, you have a minute as well. Please begin.
Thank you. According to Statistics Canada, there are 555,000 people currently unemployed in Ontario. And if Mr. Hudak cuts 100,000 public service jobs, that'll grow it to 655,000 people unemployed. Do you think it's being honest with people saying that the Conservatives will create 1 million jobs and we don't have 1 million people unemployed in the province?
Well, we don't have 1 million people unemployed in the province right now because many of them are gone. We're going to have people that will be employed in Ontario, people that do need a job, people that may want to come back. I know lots of people right now in this province that were in this province that are gone, just in my industry. I don't have to talk to you about children that are graduating university. The status quo right now in Ontario is you graduate and you leave. I know a lot of my friends that live right now in Alberta and BC that were right here. So when you talk about the people that aren't here, yeah, they're not here. But we need them to come back. We need people to want to raise their families here and have the ability to do that. With high taxes and high hydro rates, you simply can't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. Ms. Sandals, you also have a minute for cross-examination. Please begin.
Yes, thank you. Mr. McDonald, what you've avoided saying is that your leader says you will lay off 100,000 public sector workers. That's teachers, education workers, people at the University of Guelph, people at Conestoga College, people in agriculture and food and rural affairs in the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Natural Resources, it's home care workers, it's developmental service workers. Mm-hmm. Just how many people are you going to lay off in Guelph? And what's going to be the impact on the businesses in Guelph when all their customers have been laid off?
Well, I'll tell you what. Tim Hudak said over 100,000 jobs, which is 10% of the public service. That's what it was in 2009. He said it's going to be done over 4 years, the majority of it through attrition and people retiring. At the end of the day, what we have right now is a government that wants to hire more people and more people and more people. And to be honest, we pay that. Your parents pay that. You'll pay that. We all pay for these salaries. We need to bring private sector jobs back here. Listen, a lot of the recommendations in Tim Hudak's reports come from Don Drummond, your economist. He said it. No, we were the ones that are actually going to take into consideration what Don Drummond said.
And thank you, Ms. Sandals. Mr. McDonald, if you please be seated at this time.
Yep.
I'd like to ask Ms. Burnett of the Communist Party to the podium to give her opening speech.
Hi there. That might help.
You're going to have that problem. Yeah. I was going to say we're all shorting.
I am Juanita Burnett, and I am the Communist Party candidate in Guelph, These are interesting times. Workers, youth, the unemployed, and the poor need champions who will oppose cuts made in the name of austerity and fight for a people's recovery. Another Ontario is possible. We have 10 basic areas of focus in our platform, and I'm going to go over those because I think policy is really important. 1, create jobs. We need to build affordable housing, restore and expand manufacturing. Maybe we could nationalize steel. Maybe a Canadian car that is affordable and fuel efficient. And we need to rebuild infrastructure that's been left to wear down. 2, we need to raise wages and incomes. We would raise the minimum wage to $19 an hour, which would get a whole lot more people out of poverty. We're looking at a guaranteed annual income, and we need to raise social assistance and disability payments. After the Harris cuts of the 90s, they have not come anywhere near livable wages. 3, we need to look at progressive tax reform. So we would rescind the HST. We need to double corporate income tax. One of the reasons people have to pay more taxes is because corporations' taxes have been cut and cut and cut. I think they're about 11% now. They used to be upwards of 50 and more percent in the good old days when people had jobs and money. 4, stop privatization. Invest in quality public services. I think people seem to forget that services equal jobs. Public service workers pay taxes and live in our communities. We need to look at expanding health into dental, vision, pharma, and long-term care. And we need to enforce the Canada Health Act. Education, the Communist Party would enact a single secular public school system open to all. We would need to go back to needs-based funding, and we would eliminate tuition fees and increase post-secondary funding. Childcare, I think we've been waiting way too long for quality, affordable, regulated public childcare. We also need to invest in sports, culture, and recreation, including TVO and public broadcasting, which are important cultural assets. We need to look at a new financial deal for cities, so we would upload the Harris downloads. We need adequate funding for public transit, housing, health, childcare, and other services that we actually need. 6, we would enhance food security, so we would protect family farms, protect farmland from urban sprawl, fight for Canada's food sovereignty. 7, public ownership and democratic control of energy. We would develop publicly owned wind, solar, and thermal energy, which would give lots of jobs. And rebuild Ontario Hydro. Public ownership means affordable public power. 9, equality rights for all. We need to stop criminalizing dissent and enforce the Human Rights Code. I think we also need to eliminate racist immigration and refugee laws. And finally, 10, we need to curb corporate power. We would cancel CETA, NAFTA, the TTP, and whatever else they want to bring at us, I guess. We want fair trade, not free trade. I think it's important at this time especially that we enact anti-scab laws, protect free collective bargaining, and we need to enact a labor bill of rights. We also really need to seriously look at proportional representation because the system right now is not working for most of the people. The Communist Party stands for the people's needs.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett.
Not corporate greed.
I'll now ask Mr. Schreiner to begin the cross-examination. You have 1 minute, Mr. Schreiner.
Yes, thank you. There's a number of small businesses in Guelph that are essential to Guelph's economy. And have you thought about what raising the minimum wage to $19 an hour, what the implications that would be for those small business owners?
Well, I think we need to look at the tax system. I think for small businesses, and we would need to be really careful about how we decide what is a small business, but I think there could be tax incentives at some point to help even that out.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. Ms. Sandals, you have 1 minute as well. Please begin.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of piece together the economics of what you're proposing. And I take it that given you're quintupling the corporate tax rate, that this is how you're going to pay for all of your promises. But if you're going to quintuple the tax rate and almost double the minimum wage, what makes you think any businesses would stay in Ontario to actually pay all this money to pay for all your promises?
We did actually say double the corporate tax rate, not
Well, if you go
quintuple.
for, you said 5 times, you said 50%, it's about 11 now.
No, I said it used to be 50%. It used to be quite high, and it is not anymore.
It was different.
It
Thank
was
you.
pretty high.
Thank you, Ms. Sandals.
15,
Mr.
perhaps?
Gordon? Sorry. Mr. Gordon, you also have a minute for cross-examination. Please begin.
Thank you. I'm not feeling an urge to be adversarial in this minute I have. I wanted to echo something that Juanita said about working for proportional representation. It's something that the NDP is really committed to, and until we have reformed our democratic system, parties like the Communist Party and the Green Party will not have a voice in this province. And the more voices that we can have here, the more vibrant and lively and fair our democratic process will be. So I wanted to echo what you said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Ms. Burnett, if you will please be seated at this time. I'd like to ask Mr. Schreiner of the Green Party to the podium to give his opening speech.
Good morning. A big shout out to everyone. Hopefully you're awake now. I want to thank you all for coming out today because I think it's so important for young people to be engaged in politics because you're the future that all of us are really standing up for and speaking out for. And Kyle, I want to thank you for the excellent job you're doing so far as a moderator, and I'm looking forward to all of your questions. 18 years ago, I started my first local food business right on a farm just off Highway 6 north of Guelph. And I was at the ripe old age of 26, and my goal was to change the food system, to make healthy, local, organic, and natural food more available to people. And it's amazing now that 18 years later, I've seen that change happen. And while we still have a ways to go, it's amazing how much local and organic and healthy food is now available in this province. And likewise, I got into politics to promote a similar kind of change. I have 2 young daughters, and I'm deeply concerned about their future. You know, we have a youth unemployment rate in Ontario that's more than double the regular unemployment rate. Climate change is already costing us. You know, last year alone, insurance claims due to extreme weather events cost over $3 billion. Some economists are suggesting that climate change will cost our economy $50 billion by 2050, yet we hardly hear our politicians talking about it. I want to rationalize our education priorities and prioritize spending in our classrooms. I'm deeply concerned, particularly as somebody who grew up on a farm, about the fact that right now in Ontario we're losing 365 acres of farmland a day. If we continue losing it at that rate, I'm worried about, you know, will we have the land to feed you and to feed your families? And I'm also worried that we have a growing deficit, now up to $12.5 billion. And I'm worried that that's being put on your credit card. And I'm just deeply concerned that politics as usual at Queen's Park is not honestly addressing some of these big challenges. You know, I was just on TVO's agenda last night, and there was a panel, and the 3 pundits that were on the panel essentially admitted that it's difficult for politicians to get elected by being honest with people. And I want to change that. And so I'm on a mission to bring honesty and integrity and good public policy to Queen's Park. And I want you to be a part of that mission Because everyone, regardless of your age, has an important role to play in having a thriving democracy in Ontario. And I want to thank James for his shout out for proportional representation, because I think that is a way forward in having a thriving democracy. And so the Green Party's platform focuses on jobs, kids, and the environment. We believe that we can support our small businesses to create more jobs in Guelph by lowering their payroll taxes. So they don't pay taxes on those jobs. We would do that by doubling the employer health tax exemption, and we'll be honest with you about how we'll pay for it. We would do that by raising Bay Street corporate taxes by 1%, which would still mean Ontario would have some of the lowest corporate tax rates in North America. We want to help you and your families invest in your homes, to save money by saving energy and creating jobs in the trade sector. And we also want to invest in transit. And we're going to be honest with you about the fact that we're going to have to pay for it. If we want all-day GO service to Guelph, we have to pay for it. And so for less than $1 a day, we could all collectively pay for world-class transit in this province. I want to put our kids first by merging our school boards and investing the savings in our classrooms, benefiting all kids, regardless of which school system you're currently in. We want to fund a social innovation fund to help young people create the jobs in the future they want, instead of people my age telling you what kind of jobs you should create. And we want to address childhood poverty by doubling the Ontario Child Benefit to bring 500,000 children out of poverty. Finally, it's essential that we tackle the environmental challenges that Ontario faces. So the Green Party is calling for permanent protection of Class 1 farmland and source water regions. You know, I've been a huge advocate of protecting Guelph's water, and I'd like to actually just compliment Mr. McDonald, Ms. Sandals, and Mr. Gordon for coming out and speaking out with me on behalf of Guelph's water. We want to close the loopholes in legislation that damages our environment.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner.
Thank you.
I'll now ask Ms. Sandals to begin the cross-examination. You have 1 minute, Ms. Sandals.
Yes, thank you. Actually, you might be interested to know that the Liberal government, in fact, has a high-level committee of cabinet ministers and deputy ministers looking at extreme weather events and the impact on the economy. But that's not what I want to talk about. The Constitution of Canada guarantees Catholics in Ontario the right to a Catholic school system with independent governance by Catholics. Premier Wynne and I, in my capacity as Minister of Education, have met with Cardinal Collins and personally assured him that a Liberal government will continue to support Catholic education in Ontario. Mr. Schreiner referred to merging school boards. What he really wants to do is get rid of Catholic school boards. How would you defend that in front of this audience, Mr. Schreiner?
Thank you for that question. Thank you. Here's my concern. I think it's sad that 50% of the principals in this province send children with special needs home from school early. I think it's sad that students and communities are being bused across town because they can't attend their neighborhood school. I think it's sad that 124 schools in this province are facing closure. And especially when I look at the fact that if we could bring the best of the Catholic and public system together, we could save up to $1.6 billion that could be invested in your classroom. Classrooms for Catholic students, classrooms for public students in one single system. Every other province has ended separate school funding. Quebec did it in 1999, Newfoundland did it in 1999, Manitoba did it in the 1890s. And so maybe it's tough to come in front of this audience and talk about this issue, but I want to be honest with you about the fact that I believe in the 21st century, it's time to bring all of our students together into one school system.
Yep. And thank you, Ms. Sandals. Mr. Gordon, you have 1 minute as well. Please begin.
Yeah. I appreciate Mike's interest in making sure that the education system is fully functional and that we're offered the best education that we can. We are, in this current election, there's a very critical choices to be made. We have a jobs crisis, we have a crisis in our health care, we have lots of critical issues, and I'm wondering, they have to be addressed, and I share your concern about environmental issues too. I want to address those immediately. What's the value that you see of bringing this issue we've just described into the works now, when we want to make lives affordable, when we want to make things safe? It's been divisive in this province for 100 years. What's the value in adding that on right now?
Well, I look at the fact that under 3 successive governments now, teachers have been attacked. Ray Days under the NDP government, the Harris cutbacks in education, and Bill 115 with the current Liberal government, which attempted to take bargaining rights away from teachers. I look at the fact that children with special needs in many schools are being sent home early, and I don't think that's fair to them. I look at the fact that educational support staff are being cut. I look at the fact that schools are being closed, that children are being bused across town. And I think, where can we find the resources to put our kids' education first? And I would rather spend our dollars in your classroom supporting your teachers and your educational staff that are supporting them, rather than on duplicate busing, administration, and buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. And thank you, Mr. Gordon, as well. Mr. McDonald, you also have a minute for cross-examination. Please begin.
I guess it's beat up on Mike Day. You know, we're not supposed to kick somebody when you're down, but I'm going to kick you anyway.
That's all right.
As I canvassed over the last year here in Guelph, not once did I encounter one single person who asked about amalgamating school boards. Hydro rates, yes. Taxes, yes. Cost of living, absolutely. But not amalgamation, not once. I know you came here to run. My question is quite simple. Are you running for Guelph, or are you simply running in Guelph?
Great question, thank you. I'm absolutely running for Guelph. As the leader of a political party, especially if there is a minority government, I could very well hold the balance of power, and that would create a huge opportunity for Guelph. And I can tell you, as somebody who started my first business here 18 years ago and started my second business here about 15 years ago, that Guelph's values align so much with the Green Party. I mean, Guelph has the largest solar manufacturer in Canada here. We have the largest
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner.
Oh, thank you.
And also thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Schreiner, if you'll please be seated at this time. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Sandals of the Liberal Party to the podium to give her opening speech.
Good morning, everyone, and it's great to be back here. First, I'd like to correct a misimpression. The question that was asked of principals was, have you ever sent a special needs student home? And 50% said yes. If you had asked the question, have you ever sent home a student who was not special needs, 100% of principals would have said yes. So it isn't 50% of kids who have special needs are being sent home. Let's get the question right. But first, a little bit about me. I grew up in Guelph. I've been Guelph's MPP since 2003, and I'm currently Ontario's Minister of Education. Before that, I used to teach computer science at the University of Guelph, and I got involved in politics because I was fed up with what was happening in education during the Conservative reign of Mike Harris. So I was so upset by that, I got involved. But I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about our government's philosophy, Premier Wynn's philosophy. Our goal is simple: to build a strong and growing economy while making sure we take care of our people. We need to invest in jobs and manage responsibly, but at the same time, our government must deliver the services that the people of Ontario need: healthcare, education, and public infrastructure. We believe in a fair and balanced approach, and we have a plan to get there. We will invest in your education. We've already hired over 13,000 more teachers to help you since 2003. And your high school graduation rate is up 15 percentage points to 83%, a big improvement. The Conservatives are going to fire teachers. If you plan to go on to college or university, we will give students from low and middle income families a 30% off tuition grant. The Conservatives are going to stop the 30% off tuition grant. And if you have trouble finding a job after graduation, we've launched a $295 million youth job strategy to help you secure your first job. You guess what comes next? The Conservatives voted against the youth job strategy. And what about the NDP? Well, their leader, Andrea Horwath, proudly announced this week, twice, that she would spend $60 million on school repairs. Sounds like a big number, right? Do you know what was in my budget? The budget the NDP didn't like, that they rejected? We would spend $4.2 billion on fixing schools, things like fixing leaky roofs or updating old science labs. In other words, we would invest 70 times as much as the NDP in making sure you have good places to learn. We're also planning to invest $29 billion in transit and transportation infrastructure over the next 10 years. That includes the funding for full-day two-way GO train service to Guelph, which makes it easier for people to get between Toronto, Guelph, Kitchener. And the GO train funding was also in the budget that the NDP and Conservative rejected. So what would the Conservatives do? Well, we've heard about their plan to lay off 100,000 public sector workers. Many of them would be right here in Guelph, might be your family members, might be your neighbors. But what would it mean for you, the young people of Ontario? When you go out to look for your first job, you would be competing with experienced, qualified public sector workers who've been laid off. Guess who employers hire? Experience over youth. It makes it harder for you to get a job if you have to compete with all those laid off workers. So in the election of 2014, voters have a very clear choice. You can choose a Liberal government with a fair and balanced plan to invest in jobs and create opportunity for the people of Ontario. Or you can choose cuts and chaos. Please vote to keep Ontario on track. Please vote Liberal.
Thank you, Ms. Sandals. I'll now ask Mr. Gordon to begin the cross-examination. You have 1 minute, Mr. Gordon.
Yes, since we last shared podiums together in 2011, Guelph has lost 9,000 jobs. And I'm wondering how you can show us that that is not directly connected to the job policies of 11 years of Liberal government.
Well, at one point during the recession, we certainly were down a lot of jobs, but if you actually look at the employment record in Guelph, it actually has been quite favorable net new jobs compared to other communities. In fact, we actually have had a community that has survived the recession pretty well. One of the things we believe in doing is partnering with business. So we've worked with big businesses and small businesses right here in Guelph with, to help them make new investments to keep jobs. So for example, the investment in green energy and that whole plant at Canadian Solar would disappear if we had a Conservative government.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Gordon, as well.
Actually, one correction. You said that the economy is doing good. The jobs are actually 7.2%. The unemployment rate, that's 50% higher than it was 7 years ago. But anyway, just know that. Without a doubt, Ms. Sandals, the biggest concern I've encountered, I've talked about 3 of them, but the biggest concern has been the scandal surrounding the gas plants, without a doubt. The cancellation of the Mississauga and Oakville gas plants cost the taxpayers, the parents of the people here, and some of them that are here, over $1 billion. Now, what I'm concerned about is when you talk about what the Conservatives are going to do, why is it that you voted against having an inquiry into what went on with the gas plants?
Okay, so to answer this question directly, there is a Justice Committee, which is an all-party committee of the legislature. On an all-party vote of the legislature, it has spent the last year examining and cross-examining witnesses. So there is a public committee which has every single word of testimony on the record. If that isn't public, I don't know what's public. In response to the gas plants, the Conservatives, the NDP promised to cancel the same 2 gas plants
Thank
in
you,
the
Ms.
last
Sanders.
election.
Actually,
We
the question
won.
wasn't answered. I asked her why she voted against it.
Sorry. Thank you,
Does that
Mr.
get
McDonald.
answered or no? I guess I don't get answered.
Because we already had a standing committee.
But
It's
then why did you
public.
vote not to have one?
I'm going to pass the cross-examination on to Ms. Burnett at this time. Ms. Burnett, you have 1 minute.
Okay, you were talking about student funding for post-secondary and is it 300, what was the deal?
What's the deal? Oh, okay. If you are part of a lower medium income family, the definition of that is a family income of $160,000 or less. You will, if you apply for OSAP, the Ontario Student Government Loan, you will automatically, as long as you apply for it, get 30% off your tuition. And that's a grant. You don't have to pay it back. It's just 30% off your tuition if you go to a college or a university in Ontario.
Okay, thanks. Because my understanding when that was implemented, only 30% of people actually got any sort of grant like that.
What was a little bit surprising was that there were a number of
Thank you,
students
Ms.
who would have
Sandals.
qualified didn't apply.
And thank you, Ms. Burnett, as well. Ms. Sandals, if you'll please be seated at this time. I'd like to ask Mr. Gordon of the New Democratic Party to take the podium to give his opening speech.
Oh no, this podium was brought here by the Conservative Party. It's just not my height at all.
All
And
Conservatives are tall enough.
Yeah, it seemed to be here. And I'm sorry I didn't get my cross-examination of my new friend Anthony here, because my main question would be, really?
Yeah.
That's all. That's the only question.
It's 5 minutes.
Yeah. It's great to be back here at St. James. I see some of my old friends here. This, in my humble opinion, there they are. This is the school in Guelph with the best name, one thing. And I love this place. I got to work with a lot of you last year in Mr. McNamara's class doing a theater project, and I've done songwriting workshops. Some of you know me from that. I shouldn't like this school so much because I went to Centennial, but I have a real fondness for this place. In my visits here, I've learned what awesome talent you have. And I was honored that you shared your stories with me. Stories about the struggles you are going through in getting the education you want and finding your place in a really challenging world. Looking out at you today, I wish that you guys could vote, because critical decisions are being made in this election that will have a huge impact on your futures. I want to make sure that your voice is heard. That's why I'm actually doing this. My big subject in high school was music. I know with the succession of liberal conservative governments, that's almost disappeared from our school system. In this election, math is the big subject. And what I'm seeing is that the Liberals and Conservatives are experts at subtraction. Tim Hudak and Anthony here would subtract 100,000 good-paying jobs in the public sector. Under the Liberals' watch, 300,000 good manufacturing jobs have been subtracted. They've been subtracting services with cutbacks that are stressing out our healthcare and our education system. They are taking away your future opportunities. The NDP is good at addition. We want to add jobs, not take them away. We want to invest in your future. We'll get that investment back many times over because we're good at multiplication too. When we invest in making life more affordable for you, investing in making sure you get a quality education and have adequate health care, invest to make sure that we are being proper stewards of our environment. And James is making proper sure that he has his pages in the right order. invest in our culture and in our community, we are multiplying our potential for thriving as a society. When we thrive, we are taxpayers, we are consumers, we are contributing, and our economy will grow without any more of us being left behind. Liberals and Conservatives subtract, but they also divide. Their policies are widening the shocking divide between those who have and those who have not. It's getting worse in Guelph. The inequality is making it harder for you to get ahead, and it's only helping those who need the help the least. The theory that we can give large tax breaks to corporations in the hopes that their wealth will trickle down to us has been disproven a generation ago. Hello, Conservatives and Liberals. The 1950s called, they want their policies back. I've been knocking on doors every day. The stories that people are sharing with me are way different than the ones you hear in the media. I knocked on the door in the West End of a woman named Sophia, an immigrant from Ethiopia. She has 3 beautiful kids. She works an 8-hour shift as a personal support worker for just over minimum wage. When she comes home, I saw her at the only time I could have met her. It was at dinner. She was getting her family dinner, getting a babysitter, and then going out for another 8-hour shift just so that she could try to pay her bills, pay her hydro rates, get glasses for her kids, get them dental care, get them some sort of quality of life. I'm also talking to a lot of students that live in the downtown core. They're finding that tuition is out of reach for them, but they're also wondering that even if they meet the tuition, is there going to be a job waiting for them when they're done? I talked to a woman who works at the hospital as a cleaner. I happened to talk to her the very same day that Anthony's party announced that they were cutting jobs in the public sector, in healthcare, and right across the board. She thought, well, I might be out of a job, but what concerned her most was that she loves the hospital she works at. She wonders how that would compromise the safety and the health care that was being offered. So I'm hearing so many stories, and these are the ones that have convinced me to run for office. When community leaders came and asked me, I want to make a difference. I'm here to listen and help. The main thing that people are telling me is that they are really ready for a change. The more they are seeing that the NDP could be that change, and it could give them the kind of opportunities that I had when I was going through this school system. I would hope that a vote for you and a vote for me is the same thing. We want to all work together for this so that we can build your future together.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you.
I'll now ask Mr. McDonald to begin the cross-examination. You have 1 minute.
Well, I can cross-examine you, really. I'm going to get you to do a little addition for me. Over the last 3 years, your leader...
No subtractions, that's your...
Yeah. Over the last 3 years, your leader, Andrea Horwath, has supported over 90% of Liberal legislation. What makes you different from Liz Sandals? What I'm saying is a vote for you a vote for anything other than the Liberals?
Well, we actually took some heat for calling this election.
There you go, we're at high school. Good job, Jim.
Yeah. We want to build together to erect a new society. And we can't do that. We cannot support the Liberals anymore. That's why we called the election. They made 3 essential promises. We believe in democracy. We wanted to support and work within a minority government situation. We found we could no longer do it because you're absolutely right, Anthony. I share that with you. A vote for the NDP is not the same as a vote for Liberals.
Right.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Ms. Burnett, you have a minute as well. Please begin.
Okay, about the election being called. The budget was more progressive than a lot of them we've seen. I understand that the NDP's biggest problem with it was they just don't trust the Liberals anymore. So I also believe there were things that should have been changed. What would you push further in, or are you happy with the budget as it was if you believed it would happen?
No, we weren't happy with the budget the way it was, although it was clearly a campaign document. It was designed, there was a lot of NDP-friendly items in it. We could not support it because to keep the minority government alive last year, the Liberals agreed to 3 promises that was around home auto insurance, around home care, and around financial accountability. None of those promises were kept. So
Thank you, Mr.
we had,
Gordon.
in good faith, we couldn't continue this budget. It was a vote against the government.
All right, and thank you, Ms. Burnett, as well. Mr. Schreiner, you also have a minute for cross-examination.
So I think we can all agree that climate change is an expensive and serious issue that needs to be addressed. Most economists, business leaders, environmental activists, a whole host of people say the best way to address it is to put a price on carbon. But yet the NDP's policies under Andrea Horwath has been exactly the opposite, fighting to lower the cost of pollution, which will only make climate change worse. So do you think the NDP is being honest about them being serious about addressing such an important issue?
We are serious about it, and we're also serious about making life affordable to people. If you can't afford to pay your hydro bill, you're not going to have the luxury of examining how we can get off the fossil fuels that we all desire just as much as you do to get off. And also, no policy that would, for the NDP, could exist without a really comprehensive conservation policy. So we want people to learn new ways to get off using those fossil fuels to address climate change by giving credits if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Schreiner, as well. Mr. Gordon, if you'll please be seated at this time.
My question is for Mr. Schreiner. You said that 64 or about that many acres of farmland were lost every day to development. Most of that development is probably going towards residential building. Is that correct?
You know, it's a combination of subdivisions, highways, and pits and quarries primarily, but
Yes,
mostly subdivisions, yes.
So what I was wanting to know is how would you propose to prevent so much expansion? How would you propose replacing those like suburbs and subdivisions and all that other stuff?
Well, first of all, there are two things. One is we're calling for a protection of prime farmland, so there still is marginal lands that people could build on, but we're also calling for more intensification and infill development. I would have to say that the Liberals' Places to Grow Act actually started moving us in that direction. The challenge has been is that they keep creating special exemptions for people around it. So as an example, in Midhurst, in Simcoe County, they created 16 exemptions to the Places to Grow Act, which will allow a developer
Thank
to
you, Mr.
build
Schreiner.
on 1,900 acres of farmland.
All right. Next question, please.
My question's for Mrs. Sandals. With the slots, the horse racing industry got slashed. What would be your way to help fix that? Because we've lost a lot of jobs through that.
Certainly, yeah.
Okay. So what we did was we put in place a panel of 3 former ministers, one NDP, a former Minister of Agriculture, actually one of my predecessors, John Snowball, as Minister of Education, and John and I don't always agree on education, but he does know a lot about horses. So we've put in place a whole new plan. There is actually $400 million going into, over 5 years, into horse racing to support the transformation of the industry. And if you were to look at the racetracks that are near Guelph, Grand River, Mohawk, Flamborough, you would actually see that they've got as many or more race dates than they ever had.
Thank you, Ms. Sandals. Next question, please.
I have a question for Mr. Schreiner. I'm sorry. Thank you. What would you expect the Catholic kids to do if their parents still want them to go to Catholic school? Would you want them to be homeschooled or what?
I think that's that's a decision that Catholic families will make in the same way that Jewish families send their children to private schools if they so choose, or Muslim families or families of all, people who are non-faith, like Waldorf schools, for instance. Those parents and families pay out of pocket for private education, and that's a choice they make. And I would like to see us in segregation in schools bring all of our students together. Like, I want you to be in class with your neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. Next question, please.
I also got a question for Mr. Schreiner.
Thank you.
Did you know that if you do close down the Catholic schools, many teachers will lose their jobs and go homeless?
No. Well, first of all, we'll still need teachers. Those teachers will just teach in the public system. As a matter of fact, we'll actually have more money to hire more teachers and educational staff workers. So I actually think it will improve performance in our classrooms. And just so everyone knows, you know, I was baptized and confirmed in the Catholic Church. I was very active in the Catholic Church, particularly as in my youth. And so I have a great deal of respect for Catholic education and Catholic religion. I just want all of our students to be together in the same schools.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schreiner. Next question, please.
My question is for Ms. Sandals. You said that you'll have 4.2 billion dollars for the educational system. Where are you going to get that money from?
Good question.
Okay, 4.2 billion is actually the number over next 10 years to renovate schools and just repair and do general maintenance. The value of schools, the whole school portfolio in Ontario, is actually $75 billion worth just of buildings. So we need that money to maintain the buildings. My actual budget this year, including childcare, is over $25 billion. The transfers to school boards this year are $22.5 billion for operating. So that's the money that goes to paying teachers, paying education support workers,
Thank you,
like
Ms. Sandals.
education assistants.
Next question, please.
I'm a grade 10 student. A bunch of us came to Queen's Park last year. This is kind of, or last month, this is kind of directed to Liz Sandals. A bunch of us came there and we were just watching you guys argue constantly, and it kind of seemed like nothing was getting done. So it was kind of sad that us 15 and 16-year-olds were more
Mature?
respectful than you guys were. You guys weren't even listening to anyone's questions. You were just bashing each other. Like, we were more mature than you guys were. So, I mean, and also this could be for anybody else, like, how would you guys actually make sure that something gets done at Queen's Park instead of just constant arguing from adults that are acting like 2-year-olds?
I actually totally agree with you. My least favorite part of the job is being in the legislature. There are some school boards who have banned school trips in the legislature because the behavior is so disrespectful. I get work done in my
Thank you, Ms.
constituency
Sandals.
office and in my minister's office, not sitting in the legislature.
Next question, please.
Good question.
I have a question for Ms. Burnett. I was wondering, would you want Canada or Ontario to hold communist views or to become communist, just out of a question?
Personally, eventually, I think I would, but I don't see that happening. I think we've had a strong socialist country for a long time, and we've been moving away from that, and I think that's wrong. I think more people have more benefits with a more socialist country for Medicare reasons, for example. I think we can do better.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Next question, please.
My name is Mr. Conforzi, and I'm a proud and passionate Catholic teacher at St. James Catholic High School in Guelph, Ontario. And sitting in this room is my posse. And let me say, it's a privilege to stand in front of you, Minister of Education, and be able to say this. So thank you very much for that. Mr. McDonald, sir, you get on this tangent about what happened with the Orange Company and what happened in Oakville. You want to know what's more important than money? Walkerton, where lives were lost. Chop, chop. Okay? I find that you guys get up there, can't we move forward?
Yeah,
Can't we move forward?
certainly. we
Okay?
can.
And you know what it feels like when you've lost a job. I have 2 boys with autism. I'm a parent as well. And we've been able to tap some of the resources here in Guelph for kids with autism. I firmly believe it takes a village to raise a child. I would have never believed that 10 years ago, but I believe it now. The businesses in Guelph have been good to my 2 boys. My boys have got to have fruitful lives after I'm gone, okay? By cutting and chopping The teachers here in this school, with our kids with special needs, they are very passionate. They're very dedicated. And when you come in with terms like, and I just find this, I'm so overwhelmed with emotion right now. When I hear this, we're going to chop here, we're going to chop here, there are certain things, sir, you just cannot chop. And you felt the result of it when you lost the horse racing thing.
Absolutely I did.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so now you know how we feel, or how I feel as a parent. And this, to me, is we're going to cut here, we're going to cut here. Maybe we should start cutting at the top of the tree as opposed to the bottom of the tree.
Who's to say we're not cutting at the top of the tree, sir?
I have no idea. I haven't heard anything.
That's a great question. It's a fantastic question. I'm going to tell you something. The reason my program got cut and the reason a lot of programs get cut is we simply don't have money. Over the last 10 years, we've doubled the debt, and our government can't balance the books. And if somebody can't balance the books, we won't have money for those programs.
That's right.
And that's what we're looking at.
Can we move on to the next question, please? Thank you, Mr. Comfortzi. It appears we actually no longer have any time for questioning. I'm sorry for those of you who have questions remaining. So we'll now move on to the summary statements. For the sake of time, we're going to ask each candidate to speak from the table rather than from the podium. Mr. James Gordon, may we begin with you?
Certainly. It's been great watching democracy in action today. If I could come away with one thing from today, it wouldn't be to ask for your vote for NDP. It would be first to ask for you just to plain vote when you get the opportunity. As 50% of Guelphites chose not to vote in the last election, and I meet at the door people that say, well, you're all the same, you guys. Why should I vote at all? I empathize with that. We will be all the same if those 50% don't start participating. And I also wanted to say, I come from a First Nations background. My Cree elders would say that we have to look back 7 generations to honor our elders, look forward 7 generations to look after our children's children when we make a choice. Right now, too many Liberals and Conservatives are making short-term fixed choices that do not address that.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Ms. Sandel?
Yes, thank you. Absolutely get out and vote. You might be interested to know that when I was president of the Public School Boards Association, I helped Taylor Gunn start Student Vote Canada, and now as Minister of Education, I am able to help provide some funding for that organization. I feel very passionately about you getting out and voting. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that was in our budget that was alluded to. Because one of the things that you need from government is compassion for those who struggle. And when we looked at all the people who work in the public sector, the people that Mr. McDonald thinks we should cut, we found that the people who had the lowest wages and the least wage increases were the personal support workers who take care of your grandparents in their home, the child care workers who take care of little kids in child care centers, and the developmental service workers who take care of adults who are developmentally delayed. And we actually had money in our budget to increase the wages for those groups. The budget
Thank you, Ms. Sandals.
didn't pass because these guys rejected it.
Mr. Schreiner?
So Kyle, thank you for the excellent job you've done. You're a fantastic moderator. Can we have a round of applause, please? Really good. When I knock on doors, a lot of people tell me they're tired of politics as usual. They're tired of the 3 parties, that they keep getting the same thing over and over again, and they want change. And I want to invite you to be a part of making history, to be a part of electing Ontario's first Green MPP, so we can bring the kind of honesty, integrity, and good public policy to Queen's Park that Elizabeth May has brought to Ottawa. And I want to invite you to be a part of that, because you can be a part of politics even if you don't vote. And if green isn't your color, I want to encourage you to be a part of one of the other campaigns up here, because we need young people involved in politics. So thank you for inviting us to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. Ms. Burnett?
Okay, I just wanted to say, I was trying on my phone without doing it too much to look closer at the tax rates. The simplest answer I have right now, but I will be looking closer, is that from 1960, they've gone down the combined federal and provincial tax rates from about 50% down to where we're at now. Anyway, democratic electoral reform is needed now because voters have been making choices out of fear and distrust, and we have to change that. The Tories talking about jobs through attrition hits really hard. I started working at the University of Guelph in 2008. In my position, there were 9 people then, and we are down to 3. A lot of jobs at the university are being lost that way already.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Mr. McDonald?
You know, I could give you a closing and tell you what the platform is, but at the end of the day, it's as simple as this. Ms. Sandals' government can't balance the books. Mike wants to be nice to everybody. He seems like a nice guy, and Jim, I don't know what Jim was talking about, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be here for the next hour and a half or whatnot. If anybody wants me to come to their class, sit down and talk with me, have lunch with me or anything, I'm going to be right here. I don't have anywhere else to go until noon, and I'm going to be canvassing all afternoon. We can talk about what we need all day long, but until you see the person one-on-one and talk to them and ask them what they need and explain what's important for their future, it's just politics, man.
Thank you very much. Let me close the debate by thanking the candidates for taking time out of their busy schedules to address us this morning. As Matthew mentioned in his prayer at the outset, it takes courage to stand up for your political and moral beliefs before the community, especially before a tough crowd like this one at St. James. So we salute you and wish you all the best in the days and weeks ahead leading to June 12th. Good luck and Godspeed.